played on New Zealanders at the last election, when they went up and down the country and said that New Zealanders could have significant tax cuts with no cuts to public services, with no increase in borrowing. They could still have big tax cuts. Did they get that yesterday? No, they did not. They got both of those things. They got cuts to public services and they got an increase in borrowing to pay for tax cuts. That is exactly what the National Party said they would not do. This is a budget of broken promises. Be very clear about that. They broke so many of the promises in their manifesto, it's almost impossible to count it all up. John Key stared down the barrel of a TV camera and said that if he did a halfway decent job of managing the economy, they would not need to increase GST. And here we are, only 18 months into their management of the economy, and what have they done? They've increased GST in order to pay for the tax cuts that will disproportionately go to those on the highest incomes. A full third of the money that was dished out in tax cuts yesterday goes to the top 5% of income earners. People like Mr Key and me even, and the top 5% of income earners will get the lion's share of the tax cuts that are being dished out, while those on the lowest incomes continue to scrape in order to meet the increased cost of living that this budget is going to impose through increased GST and through increased inflation. Every time hard-working Kiwis go to the supermarket, they will pay more. Every time they go to fill up their car at the petrol station, they will pay more. Every time they pay their rates bill, they will pay more. Every bill that they pay that has GST on it, they will pay more. New Zealanders will pay more. And those on average and lower incomes will be given only modest, very small tax cuts. It will not compensate for the extra money that average, hard-working New Zealanders are going to be paying in order to fund the tax cuts that disproportionately go to those on the highest incomes. Broken promises is what this budget is all about. There are going to be no cuts to early childhood education under National, and in fact that's exactly what they have done. Not only have they made cuts to early childhood education, they've made cuts to the highest quality early childhood education. Those parents who send their kids to early childhood centres that have made the effort to get 100% of their staff qualified are having their funding cut. They are going to pay more, potentially if they've got 2 kids, $50 extra a week. $50 extra a week for their early childhood education. And that will not be compensated for by the tax cuts the government has offered. So those families are going to get clobbered. That was a broken promise. The national government said that they would keep interest-free student loans. Well, interest-free student loans, they haven't introduced a market interest rate, they've introduced a new annual fee instead. It is another broken promise. They said they wouldn't touch interest-free student loans, instead they've introduced a new annual fee. They said they would focus on the front line. They would focus resources on the front line. They would deliver tax cuts. They haven't focused on the front line in ACC. In fact, they've doubled the ACC policy advice budget. They've doubled the policy advice budget for ACC. And why have they done that? Because Nick Smith wants more advice on how to privatise ACC. They actually said that in the budget documents. They've got another $2 million going into policy advice on how they can privatise the ACC scheme. Another broken promise from the National Party. The biggest hoax of all, though, was that they would not increase borrowing to pay for their tax cuts, because that is exactly what they are doing in this budget. And I say to all of the baby boomers in particular out there now who will retire in the next 10 years, there will be a significant increase in the cost to the Crown of their retirement. Where is the money to pay for their superannuation going to come from? Where is the money to pay for their health care going to come from? The government haven't been contributing to the superannuation fund. They're still not contributing to the superannuation fund. Instead, they're giving out tax cuts to those on the highest incomes. What does that mean for the baby boomers who are going to retire in the next 10 to 15 years? John Key says he will resign if their superannuation is cut. He won't still be here in 10 to 15 years when they retire, but what he will have left is a strategic deficit, a massive deficit. Borrowing to pay for tax cuts is what his legacy will be. So in 10 years' time, we will have increased debt and a baby boomer population wanting to retire and wanting to have their New Zealand superannuation, and their cupboard will be bare. There will be no money left to pay for it because John Key and Bill English dished it all out in unaffordable tax cuts in this year's budget.
Honourable Clayton Cosgrove.
Mr Chair, people have called this budget a borrow and hope budget. In fact, Garnish Nana on Morning Report this morning, when asked, as Shirley Temple in the corner laughs there, as she's wont to do, laughs at everything, laughs when a rapist is on the run, laughs when a corrections officer gets his bones broken, laughs and continues to laugh. But here's the thing what Garnish Nana said.
Point of order, Honourable Deputy.
Of becoming extremely unparliamentary in his language. If he wants to call me by my correct name of Judith Collins, he can,